Welcome to Cannabis 360, your source for cannabis and psychedelic industry news, interviews, and insights. Visit canna360.ca and sign up to receive free access to the entire Cannabis 360 catalog. In this episode of High Fidelity, we speak with Dallas Devam, CEO of Cropsify. Since 2008, Dallas has operated within the MMAR, MMPR, ACMPR, and Cannabis Act regulatory environments, creating a specialized cannabis software platform for Canadian LPs. A new feature, Cropsify Connect, allows cultivators to showcase their craft to processors, retailers, and consumers by creating a lot story for each batch and enabling more informed purchasing decisions. Okay, hi Dallas, how are you today?
Doing well, thanks Connor. How are you?
I'm doing well, I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for asking. I'm excited to chat with you today about Cropsify and a little bit more about the cannabis supply chain and seed-to-sale tracking and how that all fits in. So let's start out first. Just tell me a little bit about how Cropsify got started. I know it was back in 2013. I think this is sort of as the medical cannabis regulations were changing. And so walk me through those early days and really how it all began for you guys.
Well, actually, it started in 2008 under the MMAR regulation. Okay. So I was a designated grower for two family friends in my little 10 by 10 extra bedroom in my house in Edmonton. And so for 5 years, I did that. And part of that was I was into software before that. I had a web development company before that, starting back in '96. So I created a small hobby project just to track plant health and nutrients in that little grow. And then come 2013, the MMPR regulations were enacted. And so I took those regulations, and those regulations are exactly how you would, well, not exactly, but very close to how you would write software requirements. Requirement is like a high level requirement, is something that the software must do. And so part of that was to meet the MMPR regulations. I just enhanced the hobby software in order to meet the MMPR regs, so that anywhere it was possible to grab data for record keeping, as well as the GPP part of the regulations, anything and everything through all the regulations where data could be captured, that's where I built into the current database. And then I went and found some talent online. I hired a talented developer to start building it out. And the technologies that we chose were, we just went to the best technologies and the most popular technologies that were being used on the internet. Let's say, backing up to, say, come 2013, the MMPR regulations were enacted, and those regulations became the software requirements. And so I enhanced the hobby software to meet the MMPR requirements for record keeping and GPP and the non-cannabis inventory tracking as well. So the government actually wrote the requirements for the software. So in 2013, I wanted to switch from the designated production in my basement to a full licensed production facility in Edmonton. So to meet the requirements for the application, I submitted the alpha version of the software with my application, which Health Canada accepted as a valid record-keeping solution. And so I received a letter to build on November 21st, 2013, based on that alpha version. So I took the letter to build, and that was like gold, because I attracted so many investors at that time with that letter to build. It was essentially Health Canada saying, if you build your facility based on the application plan that you submitted to us, we will give you your license. And so I had the location, had the letter to build. I just needed the money. It only took a month to find an investor who paid for the entire thing. So I got my hands dirty building a production facility. So I was in the rafters pulling wire. I was on the floor spreading mud. I was doing almost everything A to Z. And so we ended up with a facility in waiting. And so I know a lot of the older LPs will remember Health Canada stopped issuing licenses after about the 13th license. And then it was a few years before they started issuing more licenses. So it was called the black hole. And so I left the production facility in 2015 to continue just with the software. So I realized that the LP business would be more about data capture than growing plants. And so my main focus was the software business. And so I left the license facility with the first investor, and he found a partner, a banker there who also invested more. So they kept pouring their own money into it. But that facility eventually got its license. It took 4 years. And actually this year, they actually became a client of Cropsify. So come full circle, I'm finally making a few dollars off of that site. It's kind of nice. After that, after I left that company, I found a few more LPs who were willing to work with the alpha version. And so we worked with those few LPs and we took all of their requirements and we started building all of the business requirements in. So we had the regulatory stuff coming first. Then we found clientele. They fed us all of their business requirements. And so we just kept building and building and building. We haven't stopped to this day since then. So one of our first clients was actually CanTrust, and they had issues, so we had to go separate ways. We parted ways there. But now we're servicing many LPs. We've got millions of lines of code that we had to write. Spent a lot of money and time on it. And we just love doing it. We're sort of fanatical about building. And we really just use our creativity to come up with solutions for any problem that our clients really feed us. And so it took on shape, took on real shape after 2018 when the company was acquired by a Victoria-based company. So I relocated from Edmonton into Victoria, where a company based in Victoria was doing cultivation in South America. They needed a regulatory application as part of their business model. So they were going into cultivation and technology. And so then the February, after February 2019 cannabis crash, they closed down their technology arm, which they gave the technology arm back. So they, instead of closing it down, they gave the company back to me. So we're now independent once again, and still located in Victoria. Not going back to Edmonton. It's a little too cold there. So.
Right. So it sounds like, yeah, it's been quite the journey, like starting off, you know, just as a designated grower and sort of doing this, it sounds like as almost a hobby, and creating sort of the initial, at least, you know, framework and bones of what would eventually become Cropsify. And then, you know, getting your feet wet on the production side and really learning the ins and outs of that. So that must have had like a huge impact in terms of, you know, how the soccer really evolved over the last few years. And that's what I'm curious about too, sort of like we've had now the regulations in place for quite some time. I think when they were first being introduced and Health Canada came in with all of these rules and regulations, you know, I think a lot of companies were just scrambling to meet those compliance requirements. But now I think, you know, companies are getting more used to that. Like they understand the compliance side of things. They understand the reporting requirements that they have to meet. So, you know, how has sort of like seed to sale tracking and Cropsify as well evolved over the last few years? Like what are some of those major changes that occurred in the industry that almost, you know, required Cropsify to potentially pivot and make some changes to the software that maybe weren't needed in the early days of the regulated cannabis market, but now are becoming more and more, you know, a part of what seed to sale does?
Right. So saying a seed to sale is now no longer, it's more like seed to sale plus all these business requirements. So it's way more than seed to sale now. So it's changed since the first models set the standard, which it opened the gates to hundreds of software ventures trying everything from artificial intelligence to greenhouse smart pods, RFID, tagging each plant, blockchain gimmicks. I call it a gimmick, but you know, it's just a different type of tracking in a database. The one thing that hasn't changed too often are the regulatory reporting requirements and the audit reports expected by Health Canada and CRA. You know, anybody could write software, but what counts is can you audit your data? In the beginning, there was only like BioTrack THC, I think MG Freeway, and Cropsify. So that's one of the main reasons why I decided to go into the software side of the industries, because there was nothing, no Canadian-based software built especially for the Canadian regulations. And very shortly after us, Ample Organics came around. They hit the scene with all kinds of advertising money and marketing shine. So they took market share, and now Mr. Prentice made his exit, and their story is kind of over. We do get a trickle of clientele coming over from their old client base. The new owners in the US. So yeah, they're just not as active as they used to. Anyway, our strategy was to focus on building out the software before spending a lot of money, time into marketing. It meant a smaller client base, but we were able to manage all of the requests. And the main thing, our main goal was to keep our small client base happy. And now the platform is blazing, and we can onboard clients with existing data or not. Like you can migrate existing clients with existing data or new clients with ease in a relatively short time and at an amazing cost, because we've kept our business home-based, streamlined, and we didn't spend our money on marketing. We put every dime back into our production and building our new product. In general, the software industry is kind of like any other industry. It's highly competitive. You know, because we were one of the pioneers, or like we've sort of set the standard, and there was like copycats, other software vendors. You know, it's unfortunately a common thing where companies will pose as a client and then take your software, your features, and put them into their own. But it's the Wild West, you know, like the cannabis industry, including the software side, is it's like a mad gold rush, and you get a lot of people just like really trying to get in there quick. And big money, they can build fast, they can come and copy whatever they want, but they end up with a shiny paint job and no motor under it. So Cropsify, if you want to use it, a muscle car analogy, we're like the muscle car with waiting for the paint job with the big block under the hood. Whereas some of the newer platforms, they just haven't had enough time to build up that motor. So I'm not saying they're bad, but we're just more advanced. We have a bigger motor, and they have the shinier paint job maybe because it's a newer platform. So marketing is a big thing. We haven't really invested in that. Our money's better spent on our clientele and putting it back into paying our developers to work more. We've evolved from A to Z. So yeah, you mentioned in the beginning, yes, it was all about meeting regulatory requirements. And today it's of course, it's never, the regulatory requirements is top priority. Second priority is the financials. And so we've built so many different business requirements in so that a company can track all of the cannabis and non-cannabis inventory in and out, and get a view of the data, a view of what has happened in the facility so that they can make better decisions for the next lot, the next production lot can be improved. So planning, financial, of course, when the recreational regime was introduced, there was new taxation. And so, of course, we have to keep up with regulatory and financial taxes and whatnot. So, yeah, and it's never ending. We continually build. We always find new ideas, new ways to improve the user interface, remove a few clicks here or there to speed things up. Yeah, it's just never evolving. I mean, it never stops evolving.
It really is. Yeah. I mean, I think the cannabis industry is often described as a roller coaster, and I'm sure that's true, you know, in a bunch of different ways. It's often described to as a pretty cutthroat industry. So it's unfortunate to say, but I'm not surprised that, you know, things like intellectual property and stuff like that is obviously something that you really do need to protect, right? And there are these, unfortunately, you know, shady things that can happen in order to steal some good ideas, right? At the end of the day. But yeah, it's interesting to hear that, like, and it makes sense that still, like, the core at the end of the day is still, you know, the regulatory requirements, and that is still, you know, really, I think the main focus, and understandably so, of a lot of these seed to sale tracking softwares. But then again, there's additional add-ons, and I do know that Cropsify is doing a lot in terms of introducing sort of new components and aspects to the software, which I want to get to. But maybe before we get to that, can we talk a little bit about, I remember for me, my early days in the production side of the industry was very paper-based. And I've noticed sort of like an increasing amount of discussion and talk around like moving companies away from that paper-based system. And I think, you know, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think eliminating paper entirely is probably, you know, almost impossible. There is still going to be an element of that. But in terms of like record keeping, maybe even sort of just the quality management system as a whole, like, you know, how common is it to still see companies using a paper-based system? And, you know, what does that transition look like in terms of like digitizing the record management system? And is that something that, you know, you find yourself assisting companies with that are like looking to make that transition, maybe even scared of having to make that transition because it involves sort of a complete, you know, reworking, re-understanding of their QMS system? So yeah, walk me through that. Like how often are you see companies still using paper-based and having to help them make that transition? And what are some of the challenges that come along with that?
Well, I've yet to meet a QA, a quality assurance person, who's willing to 100% give up their paper-based binders. Although we've managed to facilitate digitization in some processes where the benefits are easily realized. Like the timeline when you're keeping records, the most important thing is the timeline, because obviously the platform changes over time. Health Canada wants you to report within a time frame, and so they want to know when those transformations happen. And so all of the events are recorded. If they're recorded in the correct order as they happen, meaning if you're doing real time, let's say a harvest, for example, and you've got a team of trimmers working, and you allow the trimmers to enter how much they put into a bin every time they submit one tray, then in real time, the the system timestamps it for them. They don't even have to think about the time. If you do that, if you use paper records and then you enter those, let's say at the end of the week or the following week or something, then you're challenged with taking your stack of papers. Depending upon how organized you are internally, you could either have a bunch of Post-it notes all scrambled with really bad records, or you can have a really great paper record timeline. So the challenge is just to enter everything and get the dates and the times correct. Even the time of day matters, because the inventory will only increase over time. So you can't enter data in the wrong order. And of course, Cropsify has validations built in that to stop or deny the person from selecting the wrong dates when entering back data. However, the benefits of real-time paperless is the timeline is dead on, which is the biggest challenge. So that's one area where going paperless makes a lot of sense, is during harvest, when you've got a lot of people trying to gather information together. And then the other thing is waste removal. So one of the most common tasks in a cultivation facility anyhow is pruning waste. And so if that's just quickly entered in real time, then you don't need paper records for your waste records. And then quality management as well. So just to give you an example, we have a quality management module built in so that you can record things like sanitation, which is linked to the chemicals, or you're doing pest management, it's linked to the pesticide if you're using that, or even if you're not using chemicals, you just want a record of the inspection. A quick digital record gets entered, and then when Health Canada shows up for an audit, and this is a real world example, I had a phone call from a client. They said, Health Canada's here. They have 2 questions. I'm not sure exactly where to find it in Cropsify. This was a newer client. And so within 2 minutes, I pointed them to our waste summary, and then I pointed them to the quality management modules, chemicals or critical materials that were used. And so I could hear on the phone that with the auditor was kind of giggling, like they couldn't believe how quickly that their questions were answered. I guess they're used to having to sit around or come back next week after the client goes through a stack of paperwork or spreadsheets or whatever. So yeah, going paperless in any area is possible. It's just a matter of the QA accepting the digital process. So there has to be a user acceptance sign off by the QA in order to do that. But if you can satisfy your QA, we can work with you to make that happen.
Mm-hmm. And just to like follow up on that a little bit, because you mentioned things like harvest, and you know, that's a particular process that I'm sure, you know, there's 20, 30 different ways maybe that companies approach that, right? So is that something where you're just in terms of like, you know, maybe when they weigh the material out, like, you know, do they do it pre, you know, drying, post drying, you know, I'm sure there's sort of different techniques that come into play in terms of like, when are they documenting the different processes within the system? So does that become a challenge? Like, do you find yourself sort of making recommendations of like, oh, you guys are doing it this way, but you know, it's better off to do it this way? Or is it more so like working within the framework that they have and trying to adjust and meet them where they're at, basically?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways to do each process. And over the years, like I said, we take the requirements from the client So we don't make our client conform to the software. We modify the software to meet the client's work process. And so because we've been doing it for so many years, we've built in those different methods of doing a harvest. So you can skip drying and just go to fresh frozen. You could skip curing. You can do all your trimming at the harvest. You can do part of the trimming at the harvest. You can move it to drying. You can go to curing. You can finish trimming after. You can repackage all of your drying trays or bundles. There's to storage containers or bins or bovitas or we just made the system flexible enough where now it just has every option for every type of workflow. So we're not forcing the client to change their process. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting what you said too about, the example of the Health Canada audit and how, you were on call and just were able to answer those questions immediately. Like that's something I noticed just looking into Cropsify a little bit and seeing some of your client testimonials I saw, a pretty consistent theme of just your availability for that support, right? And the fact that you are always there to answer those questions and to assist in a very, efficient and effective way. So I think that's a testament to your team and to the fact that you guys are very hands-on with the clients that you work with.
That's actually the number one reason we're winning contracts over our top competitors is when we give out a referral and they talk to existing clients. And the main thing is just service. And so we're software as a service. And so we're heavy on the service side.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of a buzzword these days, the whole software as a service thing. But, sometimes it's a good point. Like sometimes that service aspect of it isn't really, doubled down on or followed through on. So, well, yeah, let's get into some of the features because like that's something that really got, at least for me, Cropsify on my radar was just the introduction of some of the new features that you guys have been rolling out. So one of the big ones is called Cropsify Connect. So just tell me a little bit a bit more about this. I know it's pretty new. So what is that all about?
Well, Cropsify Connect is an idea I had like 2.5 years ago, I think now, where I saw my clients, some of the non-processors who are having trouble finding a good processing partner and getting their product out there, getting recognition. And then also the processors were interested in giving credit to the cultivators. So now you see some of the labels, they're actually saying they put the cultivator's name on there. So way before that started happening, I introduced this idea to our clients and said, yeah, they want to give the craft cultivators credit when they're a processor, because without the cultivator, there's nothing, right? Like we don't have anything unless there is a plant that's grown first. And so they really do deserve a lot more credit than they really receive went to the end consumer. And so I came up with an idea where I wanted to enhance Cropsify so that we can use existing data and sort of recycle it so that there's no extra work for the producer to publish some of the useful events from production data, to present that to potential partners, including processors or retailers, and then also consumers. And so the alpha version we created that on like just a web page, which was just a timeline of showing each phase of production. So propagation, vegetation, flowering, harvest, and then the dry phase, curing, and then release. And the first bit of information, which is an obvious one to share, is the certificate of analysis. And so we built a nice timeline on a public-facing interface, which showed how long it took to do each task. And then some of the quality management events were thrown in there so that the consumers get full transparency. And processing partners or retailer partners now can see what I've called the lot story. And so everybody, that's sort of a buzzword too now. We want to tell the story, right? Everybody's saying, well, we need to tell the story. Of course, retail purchasers want to satisfy their customers. And so we really built a marketing tool. So instead of going with the web version, I decided to build a mobile app from this concept. And the first version, I wanted it to work for every LP in the world, not just the Cropsify LPs. So we built it to work independent from the Cropsify backend ERP. And then the next version will actually integrate more with the backend Cropsify. So if you're an LP who's not using Cropsify right now, you could still use the marketing tool, the Cropsify Connect app, to publish your lots to either a wholesale business-to-business market, which means you're looking for processing partners or retailers to carry your product. And then we created 2 different user types to log in. So the consumers can also log in, but they get a special view where it's a very simple, it's done in the social media format. I noticed on LinkedIn, a lot of LPs will post their pictures of their plants and their processes, and do a lot of social media advertising on LinkedIn and Facebook and all your big media or big tech platforms. So I built another social media platform just for the cannabis industry, where it looks the same as a LinkedIn, but it's got a little button on the bottom right that says request. And so you could order product from there, either wholesale or consumer can request it. So when they request it, they're just creating a private reserve. And it's not actually a purchase, it's just telling the grower that the consumer wants that product when it's ready. And so not only does the consumer request go to the grower, but it also goes to the retailer that the consumer selects. So we're creating a connection between the consumer, grower, or processor and the retailer. And so the retailer will be tasked to attempt to get the product, because we've got a major problem in some provinces. Well, minor, it's a less of a problem in BC with direct delivery now, but you still have to get your product on the list, and you still have to go through the provincial regime for retailers to buy product from the from the growers or processors. But the app is there to facilitate information gathering, so the licensed producers know where their product is in demand. The retailers also know where the product is in demand, and so they can order from the distributor, or they can order direct from the cultivator or processor, and then use the app as like a really lightweight point of sale system to do the handoff to the consumer. And then the consumer can also participate in our cannabis social media and post their product review, and or just post whatever types of fun posting they want to do, like they would typically do on any other social media. And so it's another social media, but it's cannabis specific social media, but we created it so that a post there can also be mirrored or duplicated to your standard social media.
Okay.
Like the post can be sent to the Cropsify Connect story stream and any of the other social medias at the same time, like Twitter, Instagram, and it's your typical share function that most apps have. You can just share it. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I think like the key word that you mentioned there is like transparency, right? And you know, the lot story I think is a really interesting aspect of it because you know, me personally, like even you know, I'm pretty in tune and you know have my finger on the pulse in terms of like what's happening in the cannabis industry and you know the different brands that are out there and that sort of thing. But I think a lot of people don't realize just like how many brands are really just under like one LP, for example, right? So you know you're buying a product and you know it's called one thing, but really it's just you know a subdivision of another a brand, another company. And so I think you know telling that lot story in terms of like where a product is actually coming from is pretty critical because you know, it's becoming more and more muddy as time goes on. And you know, now you do have sort of this division of like the cultivator, the processor, and there's sort of that disconnect there now. And you know, the processor isn't always the cultivator, vice versa. So it's one of those things where we want to get a better understanding because you mentioned like the cultivator is really the key to all of this. And I think we, you know, we still lack a lot of brand loyalty in the industry, and there's not a lot of like, oh, I want to purchase cannabis from this grower, right? We don't really have that in this day and age, but I could definitely see that becoming more and more of a thing. Like if you really have a great experience with one particular product and you're like, hey, I want to support this product, I want to support this brand, you know, as long as there's consistency there, and then you know, I think that can go a long way. And so I think something like this where you're telling a lot story and then also to kind of adding that element of the retail side where it's like showing that there's demand for this product, right? I think can go a long way. So I love the idea. I think it's obviously something, and you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but is this something where you sort of need people to get on board for it to kind of fully realize itself?
Yeah, exactly. Launching a new social media platform is is a bigger challenge than I ever imagined. And because everybody's already on their social media, everybody already has their social media, and they're like, well, why would I want to spend time on a new one? So that's why we integrated it with like Instagram, so that when you create a post on the new social media, you can just check the box and say post it Instagram at the same time. Oh, but yeah, the lot story connects the dots to the cultivator. So at the very top of the story, it says the source starting materials came from such and such company, which will link back to that story. So it's connecting from the processor back to the cultivator. And then once the retailer has product, the retailer gets to post in the same story saying we have stock. And it could be more than one retailer. So the consumer gets a notification, and then they have, when they get stock, they can just reserve for pickup, or if delivery's legal, they can toggle the delivery service on. But yeah, you're right. If a consumer finds a product they like and they look at the pack and they see on the pack, on the label, it says who processed it. And then some of the labels say who cultivated, who grew that. And so the retailer would need to be proactive in inviting their customer base to download the app and find the cultivators that they want. And then the retailer will know what product to order, and then the consumer can wait for that next production lot and say, I want that when it's ready. And you know, I don't know if you've ever if you've ever looked for the same product twice over time. I'm sure it's not common to find the same strain or same cultivar twice, you know, over 6 months. Like you go today and buy a product, 6 months from now, can you get the same product? Can you order that? Is that even possible? Can a consumer go into the retailer and say, this product was great, can you get more of that? So the retailer might just write that down on a Post-it note or something and try. Yeah, I mean, that could happen. But we're trying to streamline that and just make that sort of the common or like a common method for the buyers from the retailer side to use this tool to decide what they want to buy from the cultivators or processors.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And like now you're even seeing, you know, some companies with, you know, different business models where it's more so like they're a brand and then they outsource sort of production from multiple different producers. And like, I think that is really where you can see some pretty big differences between like sometimes the quality of the product between those different producers. So it could be where like, you know, I really like this product, but grown by this specific producer, even if it's the same cultivar, the same brand, the same company, technically, it's not the same cultivator, right? And so I think something like this is going to become more and more relevant as time goes on. And also too, like you mentioned, like the direct delivery program, right? Like we're seeing more and more of that. And I think, you know, early days of especially cannabis retail, it was, you know, I know here in Ontario, like everyone's like, we're all selling the same thing, right? Like that was sort of the rub the whole time. It's like, we're all buying from the OCS, we're all selling the same thing. Whereas I think that's changed more and more. I mean, there's now easily like thousands of SKUs on the OCS. Like I'm sure there's ways for companies to distinguish themselves, but I think it's still not quite there. Like it's still not quite to the point where you can have like a completely unique menu offering. But again, like we're still in the early days of legalization, like that's going to change over time. And I think as that changes, something like this will become really, really important. And for you know, smaller retailers maybe that do really want this sort of curated craft menu, having, you know, sort of a record of you know, a particular product and sort of the journey that it's been on and getting, again, transparency behind that, I think can go a long way, right? In terms of, you know, developing those more unique curated craft menus that I think that the industry is still lacking a little bit of.
yes, getting the consumers involved allows them to drive the demand. And that's as simple as it gets.
Mm-hmm.
So the consumer, they get to create a type of like private reserve directly from the cultivator and then watch the story unfold. And each time the cultivator creates or publishes some event during production, then the consumers will get excited about the product. And as the harvest comes and it's cured and then it's finally released and they're waiting, then maybe they start bugging the retailer, you know, oh, can you make sure you get some of that before it's gone, right? And then it is a marketing tool and for end consumers, but it's also a business to business tool. And so in order for the whole thing to work, it needs to be adopted in mass by, like, if we had every LP jump on today, they would all benefit. It would be a total success where business partners can find each other, consumers can find them if the retailers also jump on board and invite their consumers. That's a lot to ask for, but I'm reaching out to producers, processors, and retailers, and we're kicking off the app with free monthly memberships. So the way that the pricing model goes for the app is that consumers are free, of course. LPs and retailers, and so processors and cultivators and retailers, they can also use the app for free. And the only time we charge is after there's a list of sales leads, which has some value. Then we normally would charge to unlock that list so that they could share the list between the retailer and processor. But for the first 3 months, we're giving free licensing away. So it'll be completely free end to end until we get enough onboarding and enough adoption so that there's enough activity every day on this. So it comes to life.
Well, yeah, you heard it here. I mean, this is the call to action, right? The more we we have the industry involved, the more we have people participating in something like this, the better off everyone is. And it sounds like you're trying to make it accessible for people to jump on board. So so that's great to hear. Now, I guess to finish off here,
I just want to touch on the first thing we're going to focus on is getting the cultivators on, and so the micro craft cultivators especially, because they're the ones who are looking for partnerships. And the B2B functionality of the app can replace the cannabis exchange. And so it could be a cheaper solution for a wholesale exchange, and at a fraction of the cost of what the current exchange is charging. Our normal cost right now, it's free, but our normal cost is only $85 a month. And so if you have let's say you have 4 or 5 harvests per year, and you calculate out the costs for the licensing fee over the year, you're still going to pay in like transaction fees to find a wholesale partner. It's a fraction of the cost of what you'd normally pay now. 2 to 7% is what I'm hearing, and that's quite a bit when you put together 4 or 5 crops together over the year. So yeah, we're about saving the company a lot of money too. Mainly, that's like the main motivation why you want to do it, is to make more sales and cut some costs and make more money.
Yeah, when you say like 2 to 7%, like, are we talking about sort of like a finder's fee to like find a processor, basically, is what's being charged there? And so this is sort of creating more of like an open marketplace for B2B sales, essentially. Yeah,
exactly. And so yeah, it's just an innovative, a brand new B2B market with almost no fees, almost no finder fee.
I love it.
And then
that's great. No, and affordability, cutting costs, saving money. I mean, that's what the industry needs right now, desperately. It sounds like, just with everyone talking about excise tax and inability to become profitable and stuff. So these are the kind of innovative ideas that we need to help develop a market that's going to flourish, right? Well, you guys have a lot going on. There's a lot of exciting features that you just mentioned in terms of Cropsify Connect and the law story. But and I'm sure you got a lot on your plate. But like, is there anything else on the horizon that Cropsify is working on that you wanted to hint at here or bring to our attention?
Well, like I said in the beginning, we're continually building. And version 1, the mobile app was our latest thing. We're finished version 1. Version 2 of the mobile app will integrate more with the Cropsify ERP, so that floor personnel can enter scheduling and waste, and that's about it. But we're working on implementing like new installations, like doing data migration for new clients, training, as far as new features. Let's see, our patient management module for the medical side, that's currently being integrated with another third-party medical EMR platform. So there's third-party integrations. So and that's something they're building onto their platform. So Cropsify is going to have a new partner in a clinic platform, electronic medical records platform. We have a dropship portal, which one of our clients is about to launch a call center to partner with other LPs for doing dropshipping. So if you're a processor who can sell, you have your sales license, and you're able to package and deliver to medical or sell direct, then part of what we do is also create relationships between our clients where possible. So we have this client who wants to do all the work behind managing medical patients and doing all of that part of the business. It's not an easy task to manage a call center. And so some LPs may want to sell medical. They don't have the resources to manage a call center. And so our software actually accommodates the relationship between call center and the dropshipper. So the order is created by consumer. Cropsify system calculates shipping based on source and destination, and then the LP or the producer will get an email. They can fulfill the order from their own interface. So all of the logistics and the complications around reporting and tracking that type of a transaction is automated. So the next thing on the horizon would be our there's a web portal that I have planned out, which it's not 100% go yet, but it would be more of like a centralized e-commerce place where all of our Cropsify clientele and our mobile app clientele will converge, and it'll be like a centralized e-commerce consumers just on a web-based version of sort of like a hybrid Cropsify ERP / Cropsify Connect mobile app. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Exciting. Well, I mean, it really does sound like it's been such a journey. You know what I mean? From the designated grower days till now. So really happy for what you've built, Dallas, and you should be proud of it. And it's exciting. I love this story in terms of starting off small, really focusing on the clients and the service side of things. And I've only heard great things about the platform. So thank you again for joining and talking about the evolution of seed to sale, talking about some of the new features that Cropsify has. Like I said, love the idea of the lot story, and I think that has a ton of legs and potential here. So really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today, though.
Likewise, Connor. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's great that we got to connect, and I really appreciate your time. It's amazing. I'm really happy that we get to discuss this and give us some publicity. Like I said in the beginning, we don't do marketing. We don't really do heavy marketing. We do word of mouth. And so this is sort of like a word of mouth interview. So yeah, if you're an LP producer or retailer, reach out. And if you're a consumer, download the app and start posting your product reviews. Even if the LP's not on there, you can notify them that you made a review.
I love it. Yeah, get in touch with Dallas too. I know you're really active on LinkedIn, so you're easy to find. And yeah, exactly. That's the call to action. Check it out. Check out Cropsify. Check out the app. Check out the new platform. And get involved, because I think it helps everyone, like you said. But really appreciate it and happy to do this. And hopefully we chat again soon.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of High Fidelity. For access to the entire Cannabis 360 catalog, subscribe at canna360.ca or visit our YouTube channel, Canna360.